Don't get in that car.
He had 90 seconds to make a flight, and a stranger he'd never noticed before grabbed his arm.
Plate is wrong. 1 digit. How do you know?
A parked car, a familiar driver. Real danger doesn't look like danger. 3 floors up, a man with a flat, calm voice was already pricing him to the dollar.
Page 9, 38 million.
He never notices anything.
Stop. Don't get in that car. Who are you? Why are you grabbing my arm? Sir, please. Just step back onto the curb. I'm late. The plane leaves in 90 minutes. Whatever this is, it can wait. It can't wait. That's the whole point. If you get in that car, you don't make the plane. You don't make anything ever again. Keanu looked at the kid standing in front of him. Maybe 22, hands shaking, a wrinkled lanyard around his neck that said, "Parking, Delancey Tower." The boy's name tag read Travis. Keanu had walked past that parking booth 100 times and never once read the name. "You work the garage downstairs?" "Yes, sir. Every morning." "I see your car. I see your driver. I know what's normal here, and this is not normal. What's not normal about it? It's a black car. It's the same black car I always take." "No, sir. It isn't." "Your driver," the older man, gray hair. "He always parks nose out so he can pull straight into traffic. He's done that every single day for 2 years. That car parked nose in. Whoever is driving it wants to back out slow, wants to control how fast it leaves. And the plate is wrong. 1 digit. I look at that plate every morning when I lift the gate. I know it like a phone number." Keanu's phone buzzed in his jacket. He looked at it. A text. From his own office. From a man named Gregory Vance. "Car's out front. Driver confirmed." "You're cutting it close, Keanu. Don't miss this one." He read it twice. Then he looked back at the boy. "Walk with me. Just down the block, not toward the car." "Yes, sir. Don't run. Don't look at it. Just walk like we're talking about the weather." "Are we in danger?" "I don't know yet. That's why we walk." They turned the corner onto a side street where the morning sun hadn't reached yet. The air was cold in the shade. A delivery truck idled somewhere out of sight. "Now tell me everything. Slowly. Don't leave anything out, even the parts that sound stupid. Especially those. It started 3 days ago. I was on the lower level cleaning out booth 2. The intercom there is broken. It picks up sound from the executive elevator vestibule and just leaves the line open. Nobody knows. I don't think anybody knows. I only found out because I hear things I shouldn't. Mostly boring things. Lunch plans. Golf. But 3 days ago, 2 men were talking and one of them said your name. Which men? I didn't see them. I only had the audio. But one of them, the one doing most of the talking, he had this flat, calm voice. Like when he was reading a grocery list. He said the policy was finally clean. He said the board signed off on the rider in March, and nobody read it because nobody ever reads page 9. He said once you were gone, the payout doesn't go to a person. It goes to the company, and he controls the company's accounts. Keanu stopped walking. Say that again. The part about the company. The man said if you die while attached to the production, the studio collects a key man policy. 38 million. And he said the only person who could question how that money moves is you, and you'd be the one who isn't there to question it. Then the other man said something I couldn't hear, and the calm one laughed and said, "He won't notice. He never notices anything. He gives his money away faster than we can move it. We just have to make sure he's the one who isn't around to count it." A bird landed on a railing near them, looked at nothing, and flew off. Keanu watched it go like it mattered. "You're telling me someone built a plan around a movie I haven't even finished?" "Yes, sir. And you came to me." "Why not the police?" "Because I'm 22 years old and I park cars. If I walk into a police station and say a billionaire's accountant is going to have him kidnapped, they laugh me out the door, and then somebody finds out it was me, and then I'm the problem that disappears. I figured my only chance and yours was to get to you before you got in that car. After that, I don't know. After that, you decide. I'm just a guy who lifts the gate." Keanu was quiet for a long moment. He had spent 30 years being told what powerful men were like, and most of them had been loud. This one had a flat voice and a grocery list. What's the calm man's name? You said you didn't see him, I didn't. But the other voice called him Greg. Once. Just once. And then said sorry like he wasn't supposed to. Keanu took his phone out again and looked at the text. Car's out front. Driver, confirmed. Don't miss this one. The name above it. Gregory Vance, Chief Financial Officer. The man who had cried at the company holiday party too, years ago when Keanu gave the whole crew a bonus out of his own pocket. The man who sent his kids' birthday photos to the group thread. The man who had apparently read page 9. Keanu put the phone away. You did the right thing, Travis. I haven't done anything yet. You came to me first. Most people in my life are very careful about what they tell me. You weren't careful. You were honest. That might be the most expensive honesty I've ever been handed for free. He pulled out his phone one more time and made a call. It rang twice. Walter, it's me. I need you to listen and not ask why. Yet. There's a car waiting for me outside the Delancey Tower right now, and I'm not going to get in it. I need you to find out 3 things, and I need them quietly. Any Keyman insurance the studio holds on me. Anything Gregory Vance has touched in the last 12 months. And whether a man with a commercial driver's license has been added to the studio's vendor list in the last 2 weeks. No, I'm not joking. Walter, in 30 years have I ever once called you about a movie at 6 in the morning? Exactly. So you know I'm not joking. One more thing. Don't tell anyone I called, especially not Greg. He hung up. Travis was watching him with the look of a man who has lit a match and is only now thinking about the building. What do we do now? We get you out of sight, that's first. You don't go back to that booth. You call in sick. You stay sick until I tell you you're better. And you don't talk to anyone about this. Not your supervisor, not your friends, not the guy who hired you. Anyone asks why you're out, you ate something bad. You understand? Yes, sir. And Travis? Yes, sir. Thank you. People keep telling me thanks today, and I haven't done anything. You stayed. A lot of people hear things and decide they didn't. You heard it and you stood on a curb and grabbed a stranger's arm. That's not nothing. That's the only thing. Walter Brennan had been Keanu's lawyer for 26 years and had the personality of a man who had read every contract ever written and trusted none of them. He called back that night. Keanu took it in a hotel under a name that wasn't his, a habit from a younger life he'd never fully shaken. I have your 3 things. None of them are good. Start with the worst. They're all the worst, so I'll go in order. The Keyman policy is real. It's enormous. $38 million on you, tied to your attachment to the current production. Standard for a film this size, except the payout structure was amended in March. Originally, it would have flowed into a controlled escrow with 3 signatories. The amendment roots it into an operating account with 1 signatory. Let me guess. Gregory Vance. Gregory Vance. Keanu sat down on the edge of a bed that wasn't his and looked at a window that showed him a city pretending to sleep. Tell me the rest. Vance has been moving money for at least a year. Small first, then not small. He's covering it the way people cover it when they think they have time. Which means he didn't think the whole would ever be looked at. Which means he didn't think you'd ever be in a position to look at it. There's a phrase for that in my business. Motive. And the driver, a man named Curtis Doyle, was added to the studio's approved vendor list 9 days ago. Commercial, license, no prior work for the studio, no agency, added manually. The request came from the CFO's office. He's the man who was supposed to drive you to the airport this morning, Keanu. He's the man you didn't get in the car with. Outside, far down on the street, a garbage truck did its slow work. The most ordinary sound in the world. Keanu listened to it for a while. So it's true, it's documented. Those aren't the same thing yet, but they're close. Walter, this man came to my house. He held my godson. We're not friends. We were never friends. But I trusted him with the only thing I actually pay attention to, which is making sure the people who work for me get paid. And he looked at all of it. And the thing he saw was a number he could keep if I stopped existing. People don't usually surprise me by being bad, Keanu. They surprise me by how bored they are while they do it. The man who planned this didn't hate you. That would at least be human. He just did the math. What do you want to do? The lawyer in me says go to the police tonight with everything. And the rest of you, The rest of me knows that the moment you do, Vance lawyers up, Doyle vanishes. The money stops moving in a way anyone can trace, and you spend 2 years and a fortune proving that a man you can't find tried to do a thing he'll say he never planned. And the boy, Travis. Travis becomes a 22-year-old parking attendant whose word stands against a CFO. They will eat him alive, and then they will eat the case. Keanu stood up and walked to the window. He thought about a curb, a boy with shaking hands, a plate with one wrong digit. Then we don't go to the police tonight. We go when they can't talk their way out of it. How? We let them try again. Keanu. They think it failed because I got cold feet, not because I know. As far as Greg Vance knows, I'm a man who skipped a flight because he's tired. That's the most useful thing in the world right now. A guilty man who thinks he's safe. He'll do it again the same way. He's not creative. You said it yourself. He did the math. Men who do the math always show their work. There's something else, Keanu. I didn't want to lead with it. There are others. What do you mean, others? I mean, you're not the first number, Gregory Vance. Looked at and decided was worth more gone than present. I started pulling threads, and the threads kept having people tied to the ends of them. Tell me, there's a woman named Marisol Hartley. She ran post-production sound for the studio for 9 years. 2 years ago, she flagged an invoice that didn't add up. A vendor that billed for work nobody could remember being done. She put it in writing. 6 weeks later, she was let go in what the paperwork calls a restructuring. The vendor was one of Vance's. I found 3 more invoices to it after she was gone. Bigger. Nobody flagged them because the person who flagged things wasn't there anymore. Keanu didn't say anything. He was learning that week. That silence was a thing you could use like a tool, the way the man with the flat, calm voice used it. Go on. There's a man named Desmond Pryor. He drove for the studio before Curtis Doyle was ever a name on a list. Real driver, real agency, 11 years. He told his agency in writing that he'd been asked to do a pickup that wasn't on any production schedule and that the request didn't come through normal channels. He said it felt wrong. He asked questions. Within a month, his contract wasn't renewed, and the agency was told the studio was, quote, moving to a preferred vendor. Curtis Doyle is the preferred vendor. Keanu. Desmond Pryor is the man who would have been driving you Thursday if he hadn't asked one honest question 2 years too early. And the third, an accountant. Internal, a junior one, which is why he survived, because juniors are beneath the math. Name's Eli Frost. He noticed the escrow restructuring in March. The same writer, page 9. He sent one email up the chain asking why 3 signatories had become one. He got an answer that said it was a cost efficiency measure and to focus on his own ledgers. He kept the email, he kept it, because something about the answer made his skin crawl. And he didn't know why, and he's the kind of person who keeps things that make his skin crawl. He still works there. He still has it. 3 people, Walter. 2 of them were destroyed for noticing. 1 of them was small enough to be ignored for noticing. There's a pattern in that. There's a confession in that. The pattern is that he's done this before in smaller ways and gotten comfortable. And comfort is the thing that's going to hang him, because comfortable men reuse the plan that worked. Marisol Hartley, Desmond Pryor, Eli Frost. If this ever sees a courtroom, those 3 are not collateral. Those 3 are the case. Then we don't waste them. We don't put them anywhere near the trap. We keep them clean and quiet, and we let the trap do the trap's job. And then, when there's a man in handcuffs and a driver who's already talking, we let 3 people who paid for noticing finally get to say out loud what it cost them. Witnesses aren't ammunition, Walter. They're people who got hurt for being right early. Treat them like that. There was a long silence on the line. You want to set a trap with yourself as the cheese. I want to set a trap with the truth as the cheese. I just have to be standing near it. We bring them in. Quietly. They run it. Not me. I built things from nothing for 30 years, Walter. I can follow somebody else's plan for one morning. The thing I cannot do is let this man keep sending his kids' birthday photos to a group thread while he prices my disappearance to the dollar. Detective Renata Cole had a face that had stopped being surprised by anything around the time. She made detective and had not been surprised since. She listened to the whole thing in a conference room, with the blinds shut and a recording the boy had made on a borrowed phone playing twice through a tinny speaker. When it finished, she didn't say what people in movies say. This is thin. The audio is real, but it's a captured intercom feed with no visual, no chain of custody, and a defense attorney's dream. The insurance amendment is legal until it isn't. The vendor ad is suspicious and nothing more. You understand what I'm telling you. I understand that if I walk into Gregory Vance's office today with this, he goes home tonight and starts being careful. So we don't give him today. We give him a morning that looks exactly like the one he wanted. She tapped the table once with a pen. If we do this, you do it our way. Our driver in the seat. Our cars behind you, far enough back that nobody twitches. You follow the route they give you until I say otherwise. And when I say a word, we both pick now. You go flat on the floor of that car, and you do not be a hero. I have had enough heroes in this job to last me into the ground. I'm not a hero. I'm a man who's good at being underestimated. Today that's a job skill. Pick a word. Garage. The word is garage. Of course it is. They gave it 4 days. 4 days of Keanu, being seen being tired. He let the studio reschedule the flight for Thursday. He let Gregory Vance walk him through a budget meeting on Tuesday and watched the man's flat, calm face explain a number that was wrong by exactly the amount Walter had already found. And he nodded and said it looked fine, and he watched something behind the man's eyes relax. That was the worst moment. Not the betrayal. The relief on the face of the man committing it. On Wednesday, Keanu found Travis on a bench in a park, 3 miles from anything, because the boy had nowhere safe to be, and Keanu had decided that being responsible for someone was no longer optional. You holding up? I keep thinking I made it bigger than it is. That I heard a guy planning a tax thing and turned it into a movie in my head. You didn't. I know I didn't. That's the part that makes it hard to sleep. I keep wishing I'd just kept lifting the gate. Keanu sat down next to him. A jogger went past. Somewhere a dog refused to come when it was called. When I was younger, I thought danger looked like danger. A man with a gun, a man yelling loud. Obvious, the kind you can see coming. It took me a long time to understand that the dangerous version of anything is the quiet one. The ordinary morning. The familiar car. The man who signs your paychecks. By the time it looks like danger, it's already done. You didn't make this bigger than it is. You're the only person who saw it before it finished being small. Hold on to that on the nights you can't sleep. It's true on those nights, too. Thursday came the way Thursdays do, like they don't know what they're carrying. The car was out front of Delancey Tower at 9, nose in, plate 1 digit wrong. Keanu walked out of the lobby with a bag over his shoulder and the unbothered face of a man who had nowhere to be but an airport, and he opened the door and got in, and the driver in the front seat was a man named Curtis Doyle, except it wasn't, because the man in the front seat was a 14-year veteran of the Los Angeles Police Department named Officer Reyes, wearing Curtis Doyle's exact assignment, and Curtis Doyle himself was at that moment in a room downtown discovering how quickly the people who pay you in cash become strangers. Good morning, sir. Airport. Yes, sir. Long way around this morning. Traffic on the main route. Of course there is. The car pulled out. It did not pull out fast. It pulled out slow and careful, exactly the way a car pulls out when the man driving it wants control over how the morning unspools. 3 blocks on, it did not turn toward the freeway. It turned east, toward the part of the county where the streets get wide and empty, and nobody hears anything because there's nobody to hear. Sir, the freeway's backed up solid. I'm taking surface streets. Yes, they're very empty surface streets. How long have you been driving, friend? Long time, sir. You must trust the people you drive for. Long silence, the kind you can hold in your hand. You're not taking me to the airport, sir. I told you, traffic. There's no traffic. There's no traffic anywhere on this road, because this road doesn't go anywhere a person wants to go. You were paid in cash, weren't you? That's why they picked Curtis Doyle. No bank record, no agency, no thread to pull. Just a man with a license and a number he owed somebody. Sir, I don't know what. You don't have to. In your version, you're just a man following a route. That's the version they sold you, and it's the version that ends with you in a cell, while the man who did the arithmetic goes home to his kids. Do you know what happens to drivers, friend? Not in films. In the actual world. The man who planned it makes a deal. The man who paid for it makes a deal. The man who drove makes license plates. You think the man with the flat, calm voice is going to burn his life down to keep you out of a cell. He priced a human being to the dollar. What do you imagine he thinks you're worth? The car slowed. Not because of traffic. There was no traffic. There's something you should know before you turn down. Whatever road you're about to turn down. There are 2 unmarked cars behind us, and 1 more parked across the gate you're driving toward. The man who hired you has been watched for 4 days. Everything he did this week was filmed. Right now he is sitting at a desk thinking this is working. You still have one thing left that he doesn't. Choice. You drive through that gate, and you're a kidnapper for the rest of your life. Or you stop this car right now, and you're the witness who walked away. The man's hands were white on the wheel. The most ordinary thing in the world, a man's hands on a wheel. They told me nobody gets hurt. They said I just keep you somewhere quiet a few days. That's still kidnapping, friend. That's still the rest of your life. There's a word, isn't there? There's a word. From the back seat, quiet, almost gentle garage. The car stopped. It just stopped in the middle of an empty road, the engine still running. The morning still pretending to be ordinary. Then the doors opened from the outside, and there were people in vests and calm, loud voices, and a man named Curtis Doyle's hired driver got out of a car with his hands where everyone could see them. And somewhere, 3 miles back, a man with a flat, calm voice was about to have a very loud morning. Detective Cole found Keanu standing on the empty road, like he was waiting for a bus that ran on a different schedule than the rest of the world. You all right? Yes, you went flat on the floor when he said the word. I noticed you. I'm not a complete idiot, detective. Jury's out. Jury's out. The driver's already talking. They always talk. They figure out fast that the man who hired them isn't in the room and isn't coming. He gave us Vance before we finished reading him his rights. He gave us a meeting place, a timeline, and the name of the bank where the cash came out. What about Vance? We're picking him up now. I'd like you to not be there, I understand. No, you don't. I'd like you to not be there because men who plan things like this are predictable right up. Until the second the plan fails. And then they are not predictable at all. And I have spent 20 years standing in rooms with men learning in real time that they lost. You don't want to be in that room. Trust me on the one thing in this whole week I actually know. Keanu did not go to that room. But the next morning he went to the office. 'Cause it was still, on paper, his. And because there are things a person needs to see with their own eyes. Or they never quite believe them. Gregory Vance was at his desk. They hadn't moved him yet. There were processes, lawyers, the slow grinding machinery that grinds rich men slower than it grinds poor ones. He looked up when Keanu came in, and his face did something Keanu would think about for a long time afterward. It didn't break, it adjusted, like a man recalculating. Keanu. I heard there was some kind of incident with the car service. Sit down, Greg. I'm fine, I'd rather. He sat, a flat, calm voice, even now, especially now. There's no good way to ask this, so I'll just ask it. Why? I don't know what you think you. Page 9, Greg. The March rider. The single signatory. The escrow you took the other 2 names off of. Curtis Doyle, who you added to a vendor list by hand. The cash. A man named Travis, who lifts a parking gate and has better hearing than you planned for. I have all of it. I'm not asking what. I know what. I'm asking why. For a moment the calm slipped, and what was under it was not guilt. That was the thing Keanu would carry. There was no guilt under there. There was only annoyance. The look of a man whose spreadsheet had an error he hadn't caught. You give it away. He said it like an accusation. You give all of it away. Crews, charities, strangers. People who'll never know your name. Hundreds of millions. You sit there in the same coat you've had for 10 years, and you act like the money is a problem someone else should solve. I solved it. I moved it where it would do something other than disappear into a soup kitchen. And it almost worked. And it would have worked. and you'd never have noticed. Because you never notice anything, because you don't care. And a man who doesn't care doesn't get to. He doesn't get to what, Greg? Live? He didn't answer that. To his last day, in every room, in front of every lawyer, he never answered that. He just looked at Keanu like the math should have been obvious to anyone. Like the only real crime in the room was getting caught. Like, even now, even here, he had simply followed a protocol that everyone too sentimental to understand it had failed to read. Detective Cole's people came in then, and there were no dramatics. Because there never are when it's a man in a suit. He stood. He buttoned his jacket out of habit. He did not apologize. He did not look at the photos of his kids on the desk. He told the officer his lawyer's name in a flat, calm voice. And that was the last thing Keanu ever heard him say in person. And it was, somehow, exactly the right last thing, because it told the whole truth about him in 4 words. He was still, even then, only managing a problem. The machinery did its work over the following year, the way it does, slow and expensive, and unsatisfying in the way real things are unsatisfying. There was no single dramatic verdict that made it all make sense. There was a plea on some counts, and a fight on others. And the driver testified, and the bank records did the quiet, brutal arithmetic that bank records do, and the March rider was undone, and the 3 signatures were put back. And a man who had once cried at a holiday party went to a place where they don't have holiday parties. But the verdict was never the part that mattered to Keanu. The part that mattered happened in offices, slowly, where nobody was watching. The studio's board, when it finally read page 9 for itself, did the thing boards do too late and call leadership. It brought in people to find out how one man's flat, calm voice had moved that much for that long. The internal review took 5 months. It was boring. Most justice is. It found Marisol Hartley's name in a restructuring file that had no business being a restructuring. It found Desmond Pryor's 11 years ended by a memo with a lie in it. It found Eli Frost's one email, the one he'd kept because it made his skin crawl, sitting in a folder labeled with somebody else's idea of unimportant. Marisol Hartley got a call she'd stopped expecting. Not an apology dressed up as a settlement. Though there was a settlement, and it was not small, and it was not optional for the people who paid it. The call was a job if she wanted it, running the thing she'd been fired for protecting. She thought about it for a week, and then said yes, on the condition that the invoice flag process she'd been destroyed for using got rebuilt with her name on the policy, and no single signature anywhere in it. They agreed. They were not in a position to do anything else. Desmond Pryor didn't want his old contract back. He'd built something smaller, and his own in the 2 years it took the world to admit he'd been right. And he said, when they asked, that he'd rather be the man who got asked back than the man who needed to be. But he let them put it in writing that he had been let go for asking an honest question, and he framed that letter, and he hung it where his clients could see it. And it was, he said, the best advertising he'd ever had. Eli Frost, the junior accountant, the one small enough to survive being right, did not stay junior. He was the person in the building who had kept the email, and a company that has just learned what it costs to lose people who keep things tense briefly while the lesson is fresh to promote them. He ran the new escrow controls, 3 signatures, no exceptions. The first thing he did in the job was write the rule that no rider gets amended without 2 human beings reading it out loud to each other, page by page, including page 9, especially page 9. People called it the Frost Rule for about a year, and then they just called it how things worked, which is what happens to a good rule when it wins. There was a culture change after that, the kind that doesn't get a memo because the people having it would be embarrassed by a memo. People started reading the things they signed. Junior people started saying the thing that made their skin crawl out loud in rooms, to faces, because the building had a recent and excessive memory of what happened when they didn't. It didn't last forever. Those things never do. But it lasted long enough to matter to the people it mattered to. And that, Keanu came to think, was the only honest measure of anything. The studio survived. The film eventually got finished. Keanu sat in a budget meeting 8 months later with two new people whose names he made himself learn on the first day, and one of them asked him a question about an escrow account, and he answered it himself, and he noticed that he had answered it himself, and that small thing felt like the only verdict that mattered. He found Travis on a Thursday, because Thursdays had stopped being a thing he flinched at, and he wanted to keep it that way. The boy still had the lanyard. He'd gone back to the booth. He said he liked it. He said it was honest work, and he could think while he did it. And after a year, he had decided that thinking while you worked was underrated. You don't have to keep doing this, I know. That's why I do it. Because I don't have to. Keanu laughed. The real one, the one almost nobody got. Can I tell you something, Travis? You changed something in me, and I don't think you know it. I gave money away for 30 years. I was proud of it. I thought it made me a certain kind of person. And it took a guy who lifts a gate to make me understand that I'd been giving away the easy thing. Money was never the part that cost me anything. Paying attention was. You paid attention to a parked car. You paid attention to one wrong digit on a plate. You paid attention to a man you'd never spoken to, enough to put yourself in front of his life. I had 30 years and a fortune, and I'd never once read the name on your lanyard. That was the real to poverty, not the kind I thought I was solving. What happens now? Now there's an account with your name on it, not a gift. I want to be clear, it isn't a gift. A gift is the easy thing again, and I'm done with the easy thing. It's a door. School, or whatever the opposite of a parking booth is, or this booth forever if that's the honest answer for you. Your choice. I'm not paying you for what you did. You can't pay somebody for that. What you did was free, and that's exactly why it was worth more than anything in that man's spreadsheet. I'm just making sure the person who paid attention has more choices than the people who never do. I don't know what to say. Don't say thanks. People said thanks to me all week the year this happened, and not one of them had done anything. You did the thing. You don't get to also do the thanking. Travis laughed. He looked at the booth and the gate and the ordinary morning that wasn't trying to kill anyone today. My dad used to say, doing the right thing doesn't make life easier. It just makes the nights quieter. He sounds like he was a smart man. He lifted gate, too, for 30 years. I used to be embarrassed about that. I'm not anymore. There are going to be many mornings in your life, Travis, when you see something that's wrong, and the whole world is built to make staying quiet the easy choice. It will almost always be easier. It will almost always be safer. And the only people who ever change anything are the ones who decide, on an ordinary Thursday, with their hands shaking, that easy isn't the same as right. The man who tried to end me had every advantage: money, position, a flat, calm voice, and a plan that should have worked. He lost to a kid with a wrinkled lanyard who refused to decide he hadn't heard what he heard. Remember that the next time the world tells you you're nobody, the world is frequently wrong about who matters. It was wrong about you by exactly $38 million. And one human life, mine. The gate went up. A car pulled through, ordinary, no one wonderful in it, on the way to nowhere dramatic. Travis lifted his hand the way you do. Keanu watched him do it and thought, not for the first time that year, that he had spent his whole life looking for the powerful people in every room and had walked past the only one who mattered every single morning for 2 years. Without ever once reading his name, he read it now, out loud, just to hear it said by someone who finally knew what it was worth. Then he went back to work, in a coat he'd had for 10 years, in a life somebody had tried to take and a stranger had refused to let go of. And for the first time in a very long time, he was paying attention to all of it.